I'm Elizabeth. We've just come alongside after having a day sail and really lovely calm conditions. And this is the story of how I've come to grapple knots, and I've been out today practicing those knots whilst we were sailing. And I've asked John to make some videos of the knots that you'd find helpful when you are sailing.
There are a few knots that it's really very important to know, and they're a part of the competent crew syllabus, and very often on the courses that I teach you introduce the knots as you use them, and towards the middle of the week people are beginning to get hold of it, but sometimes they don't practice them well enough, or they just take a little bit longer, and once you lose confidence in your ability to tie knots, then things get a little bit harder work. So I would suggest very much that try and pick these up early, practice them frequently and often. Two things that I would suggest you can do very much off the boat is that you can grab yourself some rope, get two different colors, get reasonable lengths. If you try and do this with shoelaces, it won't work very well, although by the end of it you should be able to tie knots in shoelaces. The other thing I would suggest very much is grab hold of a book that has got a couple of these pictures in, certainly until you're really comfortable with it. And it doesn't have to be the world's biggest, most complicated book like that one, but you know, it can be a nice little one like this that's just got a few pictures that allows you to just go back and double check in your own time. Knots are definitely something best practiced on your own, such that you can build up the confidence that you know that in a hurry, when there's a little bit of a calamity going on, or at night, you're going to be able to tie the knot, tie it right, and not have to worry about it. That little bit of practice will save you quite a lot of anxiety later on. What I thought I'd do, in addition to showing the initial knots in context, is by putting the camera over my shoulder, I will just try and draw those knots out and how you put them together nice and slowly. I hope this helps. Before we get going with this, there's a couple of names that I'm going to use. The main part of the rope, well away from where we're trying to tie the knot, is known as the standing part. When we put a loop in something, that's called a bight, and the bit that we're going to work with is called the working end, and amusingly or not, the far end is known as the bitter end. But mostly we'll be working and talking in terms of the standing part and the working part. The first knot I'm going to demonstrate is the reef knot, used for joining two ropes together of equal thickness. It really is just a case of put one end over the other and twist the other end down, and then same edge, this time the right over the left, and twist, and you get that knot there, like so, joining two ropes of equal thickness together, just working with the working ends. Similar but slightly different is the sheet bend. Now this is for drawing two lines together of unequal thickness. Now these are both the same size, but I'm using the different colors to indicate that. Line goes up through the bight that has been created, round the back, and then tucks underneath itself like so. And you can see it looks a lot like the reef knot, but it's got this slight change here that it tucks underneath itself, and then as the weight comes onto that, it jams itself nice and tight. That can be made a little bit more secure, as we described earlier, by taking a little bit more standing part, wrapping it round twice, and then tucking it away. And that gives us a double sheet bend, still for joining two ropes together of unequal thickness. The next one I'm going to show you is the bowline. This one gets people quite badly mangled, but it is, I would say, my favourite. Let's put our standing part up there, put a loop in your rope such that the working end is on top of the standing end. Then take the working end up through that loop, around the back of the standing part, back down through the bight, and then just holding these ends of the working part and the standing part, pull it tight. That gives you a bight in a rope. Really very useful for your mooring lines. The next thing I'm going to demonstrate is a couple of hitches. Hitches are for connecting a rope to another rope or to a spar. So if you imagine that this line here is another rope that we want to tie onto, or perhaps a guardrail, something like that, we can do a clove hitch. In a clove hitch, we take one line over the top of the other, wrap it round, cross it over, then wrap it round again, and then tuck it away underneath. And if I just pull that nice and tight, what you can ideally see is that our clove hitch is connected, which is the red line, is connected to the blue line, and if we pull down on the standing part, that won't slip. So that's the clove hitch. We use that for putting our fenders on. Similar to that is the round turn and 2/2 hitches. So let's imagine we've already got to the round turn. We put another turn on, tighten that up, and then what we can do is put line in there, and then in there again, and that gives us a round turn and 2/2 hitches. I maybe should have made this working end very slightly longer. The last one in terms of hitches that I'm going to show is the rolling hitch. Let's imagine that we have a rope. We want to put a line onto it in order to give it a tug in one direction. What we do is we take our line over the top and put our turn against the direction that we want to pull it. Put another turn on, again in the direction, this time inside, and then tuck it away, a lot like the clove hitch we did earlier. Then pull that all nice and tight, and you'll notice that I'm tightening up on the reds. That gives us our rolling hitch, and that will pull against the two loops. So if I wanted to pull that way, it would pull that way. And trust me, if there's a lot of weight on it, for example a sheet wrapped around a winch drum that has got a riding hitch and you need to pull on the sheet, this will allow you to do it. It's a figure of 8 knot. Make a bight, take the working end over the standing part, round it, and then back through the bight, pull it nice and tight, and that gives you the figure of 8 knot, which will stop a knot going through either a jammer or a Genoa car or something like that, saving you from losing that rope. Ideally, that gives you the 8 knots that are in the RYA's competent crew syllabus, and as I said before, the thing that's important is being able to tie them, knowing that you're going to get them right, and doing that in a little bit of a rush and in the dark. And I think the best way to do that is just to spend a bit of time on your own with a piece of rope, giving a little bit of a practice.
And I certainly have found these videos quite useful, and thank you very much for watching.